What happens when a single torn ACL transforms a championship contender into desperate buyers while turning a rebuilding franchise into the most powerful deal-maker in the league? The basketball universe shifted overnight, and the reverberations are about to reshape two franchises in ways that will echo for decades. Fred VanVleet's devastating season-ending injury isn't just a medical setback. It's a seismic earthquake that's cracked open the NBA's power structure, creating a perfect storm of desperation and opportunity that has the Chicago Bulls sitting pretty with all the cards. When champions fall, Houston's house of cards collapses. Picture this. You're the Houston Rockets, riding high on championship dreams with Kevin Durant leading your perfectly crafted roster. Training camp is days away, expectations are through the roof, and then, snap. Your veteran floor general goes down with a torn ACL, and suddenly your title aspirations are hanging by a thread. This isn't your typical next man up scenario that teams navigate with system adjustments and role player heroics. This is organizational devastation on a scale that forces championship caliber franchises into panic mode, making moves they'd never consider under normal circumstances. VanVleet wasn't just Houston's starting point guard. He was the veteran compass meant to navigate their young core through the treacherous waters of championship contention. His injury doesn't merely create a roster hole, it completely obliterates their offensive identity and leadership structure just when they needed stability most. The psychological shockwaves rippling through the organization are equally devastating. Players, coaches, and management had built their entire season around VanVleet's presence. Now, they're staring at fundamental questions about their championship timeline while watching the clock tick toward opening night. The depth chart nightmare that's keeping Houston awake. Let's examine the wreckage of Houston's point guard situation with brutal honesty. With VanVleet sidelined indefinitely, they're banking on second-year guard Reed Shepherd and veteran Aaron Holiday, with versatile wing Amen Thompson potentially handling playmaking duties. On paper, that might sound adequate. In reality, it's a championship contender's worst nightmare. Shepherd, despite being the third overall pick in 2024, managed just 52 games as a rookie while averaging a concerning 4.4 points on 35.1% field goal shooting and 33.8% from beyond the arc. These aren't the numbers that inspire confidence in a starting role for a team with title aspirations. Holiday presents an even more troubling option. 7 years into his professional career, he started only 66 games total, posting career averages of 6.5 points, 1.6 rebounds, 2.0 assists, and 1.0 three-pointers per game. These are textbook backup statistics, not the production you'd expect from your starting floor general on a championship squad. While Thompson, Alperen Sengun, and Durant are all capable playmakers, none of them are true point guards whose primary responsibility is orchestrating offense and creating optimal scoring opportunities for their teammates. Houston desperately needs a legitimate floor general, and their current options simply don't provide that solution. Financial handcuffs. Why Houston can't simply buy their way out here's where Houston's desperation becomes truly suffocating. Sitting just $1.25 million below the first apron, they can't simply sign free agents to patch their point guard shortage. Adding a player like Russell Westbrook, despite his previous Houston history, isn't financially feasible under their current salary cap constraints. This financial reality forces the Rockets into the trade market, where they have limited flexibility and even fewer attractive assets to offer. Houston has only 6 trade-eligible players following their offseason moves: Durant, Sengun, Amen Thompson, Shepherd, Jabari Smith Jr., and Tari Eason. Of these 6 players, only Eason and Shepherd seem realistically tradable. Durant is obviously untouchable, Sengun is their franchise cornerstone, and Smith Jr. and Thompson represent crucial pieces of their young core. This leaves Eason as their most valuable and logical trade chip. The limited options put Houston in an incredibly vulnerable negotiating position. Other teams know they're desperate, which typically leads to unfavorable trade terms and overpayments for solutions that might not even address their fundamental problems. Tari Eason. Houston's golden ticket to Salvaging Eason represents Houston's most realistic path to acquiring point guard help, but trading him would require significant sacrifice. The 24-year-old wing has proven himself as a valuable contributor over his first 3 seasons, appearing in 161 games and averaging 22.8 minutes, while posting impressive numbers across multiple categories. His production: 10.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 1.2 assists, 1.4 steals, and 0.7 blocks per game, demonstrates remarkable versatility and impact despite playing primarily in a reserve role. His defensive prowess and infectious energy make him exactly the type of player championship teams need for depth and matchup flexibility. However, Houston's heavy investment in their front court makes Eason arguably expendable from a roster construction standpoint. With Dillon Brooks, Smith Jr., and Thompson under contract for multiple seasons, plus Durant likely finishing his career in Houston, paying Eason significant money in his next contract could be considered roster overkill. This reality, combined with Eason's desire for a larger role after spending his entire career coming off the bench, creates a scenario where both player and organization might benefit from a trade. Eason gets his opportunity for expanded responsibilities, while Houston addresses their most pressing need: Chicago's perfect storm. When desperation meets opportunity, the Bulls find themselves in an absolutely ideal position to capitalize on Houston's desperation. Chicago has been prioritizing their forward unit restructuring, drafting Matas Buzelis, and acquiring players like Kevin Huerter and Isaac Okoro. This makes acquiring another forward, like Eason, even more appealing for their roster balance. More importantly, Chicago possesses exactly what Houston needs: proven point guard talent in Ayo Dosunmu and Coby White. Both players have demonstrated their abilities at the NBA level, but they're also approaching significant contract extensions that will make them expensive to retain. The timing creates perfect leverage for Chicago. They can offer Houston immediate help at point guard while potentially avoiding expensive long-term commitments to players who might not fit their rebuilding timeline. It's a classic win-win scenario where both teams address their most pressing organizational needs. Chicago's front office likely recognizes that Dosunmu and White's trade value might never be higher than it is right now. Both players are productive on relatively inexpensive contracts and appeal to teams looking for immediate help rather than long-term commitments. The Dosunmu solution: Houston's perfect fit Ayo Dosunmu emerges as the most logical centerpiece for a potential Houston-Chicago trade. The 6'5" guard brings exactly the versatility and skill set that Houston needs to replace VanVleet's production, albeit in a different style. Dosunmu's ability to play both on-ball and off-ball roles makes him particularly valuable for Houston's system. He can initiate offense when needed while also functioning effectively alongside other playmakers like Thompson, Sengun, and Durant. This flexibility would allow Houston to maintain offensive flow regardless of personnel combinations. Defensively, Dosunmu contributes on both ends of the floor and possesses the size to guard multiple positions. While he's essentially a smaller version of Eason, his point guard skills make him more valuable for Houston's current needs than Eason's forward capabilities. The financial aspects also make sense for both teams. Dosunmu is on a reasonable contract that fits Houston's salary cap constraints, while Eason's expiring deal gives Chicago flexibility for their rebuilding timeline. Leverage games. Why Chicago holds all the cards. What makes this potential trade particularly fascinating is how the negotiation dynamics heavily favor Chicago. Houston's desperation to address their point guard situation before the season starts gives the Bulls significant leverage in any trade discussions. Chicago can afford to be patient and wait for Houston's best offer, knowing that the Rockets' options are limited and their need is urgent. This leverage typically results in the desperate team overpaying or including additional assets to secure the deal. The Bulls also have multiple options to offer Houston, creating competition between their own assets that could drive up the return value. Whether Houston prefers Dosunmu's versatility or White's scoring ability, Chicago controls the negotiation process. Championship windows and rebuilding timelines for Houston, this trade represents more than just roster management. It's about salvaging their championship window, while Durant is still capable of elite performance. At 36 years old, Durant's remaining prime seasons are limited, making every year crucial for Houston's title aspirations. The Rockets can't afford to waste a season hoping their young players develop quickly enough to contribute to championship contention. They need immediate solutions, even if it means sacrificing future assets or overpaying for current production. Chicago, conversely, benefits from trading productive players before their contracts become expensive while acquiring assets that fit their rebuilding timeline. It's strategic roster management that maximizes value while maintaining competitive flexibility. The ripple effect that could reshape both conferences. This potential trade could create massive ripple effects throughout both conferences. If Houston successfully replaces VanVleet's production, they remain dangerous championship contenders in a loaded Western Conference. If they fail to address their point guard needs, it opens opportunities for other teams to claim higher playoff seeding. For Chicago, trading away productive guards accelerates their rebuilding process while potentially adding a valuable wing player who could contribute to their long-term success. It's the type of move that rebuilding teams should make when presented with favorable circumstances. The brutal reality of NBA timing. Ultimately, this situation perfectly illustrates the brutal reality of NBA timing and opportunity. VanVleet's injury instantly transformed Houston from patient team builders into desperate buyers, while simultaneously elevating Chicago from rebuilding sellers into power brokers with valuable assets. The teams that capitalize on these unexpected opportunities are often the ones that exceed expectations or make surprise playoff runs. Conversely, teams that fail to adapt to sudden changes frequently fall short of their goals despite having superior talent on paper. Both Houston and Chicago face crucial decisions that could define their franchises' trajectories. The Rockets must decide whether to sacrifice future assets for immediate help, while the Bulls must determine which productive players to trade before their contracts become expensive. VanVleet's injury might have just created the most consequential trade opportunity of the season, with implications that extend far beyond simple roster moves. The franchise that makes the smartest decision in this high-stakes poker game could be setting themselves up for years of success. What's your take on this brewing trade storm? Should Houston mortgage their future for Dosunmu, or are you thinking Chicago should hold tight and see how desperate the Rockets get? Sound off in the comments. I'm curious to see who you think has the upper hand in these negotiations, and don't forget to hit that like button if you want more breakdowns of the trades that could reshape the entire league.